Hello there, and welcome back to Gooner U, where there are no degrees because the learning never stops. I'm Dove, a TA here at Gooner U, and my friend Keith is our stalwart distinguished professor of Arsenal and football studies. Enter our classroom as we discuss the week's news involving Arsenal, Premier League, Champions League, international football, Carabao Cup, and sometimes MLS because we're Americans. This week featured the return leg of the Champions League round of 16 at the Arsenal Stadium, can't call it Emirates Stadium, to face Bayer Leverkusen, and then traveled to Wembley in the Carabao Cup final against Manchester City. Hello, Keith.
Hello, Dove. I don't know about you, but I'm kind of exhausted from this week.
Yeah, it was an emotional roller coaster, definitely. The excitement all week, looking forward to the Cup final, and then that happens.
Yeah, but I don't want to lose sight. We'll talk about it. We don't want to lose sight, too, of the excitement of the Champions League one. I think there's a lot of good to see there, too.
Definitely.
And
we started out right.
Right. There's a lot of good in that one, and overall unwell. So, definitely a tale of two matches this week, more so than usual.
In last week's episode, I made mention of Pedro Neto from Chelsea having some additional, to call it a penalty, I guess that's a loaded term in soccer, but some additional action against him after we played them a few weeks back. And I kind of conflated two things when I was talking about it. I mentioned a ball boy and a fourth official, and those were two separate incidents. So let me just get that out there, and now there will be links if you want to learn more. But basically, he got sent off for a second yellow against us when Arsenal played them. And I remember seeing at the time, as he was making his way off the pitch, taking his time doing so, he was verbally abusing anyone in his way, including the fourth official. And I was just commenting to whoever I was watching it with, like, yeah, that's how you do it. Just keep mouthing off. That can't make things worse. It's just basically the opposite. What I tell my son, like, yeah, just stop talking. You can only make it worse, right? Well, That did make it worse because he was given a second additional match ban in the Premier League after that because of that behavior. Now, what was going on at the time, and the reason those two conflated in my mind, is there was another match. This was against PSG in the Champions League, Paris Saint-Germain, where apparently he shoved a ball boy. And there was no action taken at the time on the pitch, but then UEFA was reviewing it, and there was a potential of like a retroactive red card that might have been given where he would have a one-match ban. But that didn't end up materializing. They gave him a harshly worded letter or something to that effect.
I did love that it was addressed to Mr. Pedro Neto, which I mean is an accurate title, but just feels so delightfully formal.
Yeah. What the heck is wrong with you to shove a ball boy? Like
that one, and I can't speak to the particular incident, but it's one of the reasons that we had. Remember, I mean, because you've been watching long enough, where it used to be they had the ball boys would hand the ball off, and then they got rid of them and put them on the cones. If you're trying to move and pick up the tempo and play that way, the ball boy's getting in the way. Okay, I realize it looks bad because you're pushing a child, and I'm not trying to defend pushing around children, but like in that competitive moment, like the ball boy is in the way, and if he's in the way, you kind of have some, and that kind of is where we get to the sternly worded letter bit. Is like, okay, maybe you didn't need to do that, but I mean, why doesn't he get the extra penalty?
Mm-hmm.
He is trying to play the game, there's something going on.
Yeah. And obviously that's going to matter more when you're the visiting team, because it's the home team's ball boy that's going to try and give their club whatever advantage they can in that moment.
That's
perceived that way.
That's generally how it's understood. I don't know that that's always. I don't know that it's necessarily always fair to say it plays out that way in practice, but. I mean, I'll say two things about this. One, of course, he was particularly mouthy after the second yellow against Arsenal, given it was a painfully obvious second yellow. Like, stop it. And then just to follow that up with, you know what? I was feeling a little down, and then we got to laugh at Chelsea today, so I feel a little better.
A service I provide.
I can feel
No
a little bit
additional
better.
cost.
We should. I mean, the day began brightly. Spurs lost at home to Forest.
Right. I saw that after.
It currently sits 1 point above relegation. The quad is still on. If we count Spurs relegation as the quad is still. If we count Spurs relegation as our fourth trophy, the quad is still alive.
With a little help from St. Tottenham, maybe.
There is going to be a long-standing debate among Arsenal scholars whether, at this point, St. Tottenham's Day would then become the final day of this season, or would it be officially the opening of the next season? At which point it becomes mathematically. When does it become mathematically possible for them to finish ahead of us in the table?
Right.
Scholars will spend many. There'll be many texts examined on this.
I feel a dessert topic coming up for the last show of the season.
Is it, in fact, St. Tottenham? I remember the old day. I remind them of the old days of the internet where they, and I know these sites still exist, but you could basically type in a question, when is the next St. Tottenham's Day? It would just be like one website that would just be like today or, on this day.
Right.
And that would be the whole website.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We hosted Bayer Leverkusen this week. This was an early match this week. It was Tuesday. That was a little difficult to get used to, but we entered the fixture with a draw, essentially, right? So, ultimately, it was just win at home and we're home free, and we did that in superb fashion. So mission accomplished there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to breeze too quickly through the game. Obviously, it was a definite benefit to get the penalty late. Good conversion for Havertz, and it kind of set us up for this game at home. And I think if there were criticisms to be had about the way Arsenal played in the first leg, about maybe sitting back, maybe not being as aggressive going forward, Bayer Leverkusen was sitting deep. They were, defending robustly. We did not do that this time out. They came ready, and it felt for much of the first half almost like they were finding their range. Like they kept getting closer and closer and closer.
Stay on target.
And the keeper made a couple of really good saves there. But it just felt like we were really putting the pressure on them in the first half.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Like you said, the scoring felt inevitable when it finally happened. We're like, okay, there we go. It wasn't like out of nowhere where we just like that soccer goal a few weeks back in the 7th minute against Brighton, where it's like, okay.
Oh, yeah. Just rolled it through his legs.
Yeah.
I will say, though, given the way the game was progressing, it felt like it was just going to be like an ugly, dirty goal, a set piece goal, or something. It was going to be something like that. So if there was a surprise for this one, it was the fact that it was Eze on the half volley like that. Woo!
That was amazing.
Oh, my goodness. What a goal.
And right into the corner. What a shot.
Oh, I mean, to get the bounce like that. I mean, he scored. I mean, you see, even Eze himself is celebrate. Like, he can't even celebrate. Just kind of, pointing to the badge. Just kind of swaggered around for a little. Saliba comes over. I love the way Saliba celebrates other people scoring. Saliba comes over like running towards him with his hands on his head. They said Zubimendi was there. You see him in the back just going like, he's just standing there kind of stunned. Yeah. It was an incredible shot. But the kind of thing you need to do to break, it's one of the ways you break down. We talked about this over the years. One of the ways you break down a team that's packed tight defensively is you shoot from distance. And we had that Eze with the shot there. And he found that space. Like you'll notice that we've talked about this in some of those other instances too, right? Where when those teams drop back defensively, that leaves space open at the top of the box. And Eze is able to get into that space. The pass finds him there, and then gets the bounce, and then the half volley, and just struck it perfectly.
Yeah, you can't ask for more. I mean, and I feel like It's funny. You see that it seems to be almost every match where there's like a half volleying. Like the players are very ready for it. They just like stick their one foot up like parallel to the ground and just like swivel on their hips. Like they clearly train for when that happens. They look ready. It's like, I remember the first time I saw it, and this is probably a few years ago now, but it may have even been Trossard. I've seen him do that a few times now, but it's just it blew my mind, and now I'm seeing it more. Like it's something they might be practicing. I don't know.
Oh yeah, I mean it's a play that it's kind of has happened to many guys before. Like it's to the extent you can practice like bouncing the ball in front of somebody, but it kind of goes a lot to the things that make them the kind of athletes they are. It's not just like the fast twitch muscles and the physical conditioning. It's also that kind of hand-eye coordination, or I guess foot-eye coordination in this case. Like, I mean, because that's hard. That is much harder than he makes it look. The ability to time that perfectly. You'll see a lot of times. I mean, like if you or I tried it, the most likely outcome is we just whiff on the ball. But I think a lot of times you'll see guys, they mistime it to the point they get under the ball and you half volley it, just sky it up into the stands and nowhere near the target. But he caught that one pure, so he didn't.
Yeah, and it wasn't like a lot of times with those half volley shots. It's rebounded off the crossbar of the post, the keeper, or something like that, and it comes back to them. But that was a ball that he accepted from a pass. Like it basically, like it came into him. I think he played it off his hip or something. Or like his foot. I think it was like bouncing toward me, like stopped with his foot, but it didn't settle. And then he just turned around and went for it. It was like he wasn't even looking at the goal a lot of the time, like as he was like preparing to shoot. It was just, really magic.
And apparently at that point in the game, the possession was 52-48.
Yeah, what the heck? Like, were you as surprised as I was when they put that graphic on screen?
Yeah, so it's spring break. It was spring break, so I have to go back to work tomorrow. But it was spring break, and so I was in the pub. It's a small crowd on midweek games like this. But yeah, someone that came up with the screen, we all kind of looked at each other. We were like, "What? How?
Yeah,
what?"
I know. I had the same reaction. Like, when? When did they have it? 48% of the time. Like, it was baffling.
Because really, honestly, this was a beatdown. I mean, we just came after them relentlessly. And then to the extent that you're a little worried maybe in the second half about, is there going to be a let up? No, we just came out, kept doing it. Just kept doing it. And
so eventually the ball lands at Declan Rice's feet, and all of a sudden it's 2-0.
Yeah, his was a little different. It was more of a seeing eye line drive there, right? Not far off the ground. Just kisses the inside of the post. I mean, again, in some ways, just as, if not in some ways, maybe more impressive than Eze's goal. But both of those two just absolutely leather the ball. Like, really just.
Oh, yeah.
Just a tremendous amount of power on those shots.
Yeah, there were three guys like triple teaming him, like closing in on him, and he still managed to find that gap through them. I don't know how.
Yeah, I mean, like Eze scores and everybody's in shock because it's so incredible. Rice scores because you almost think, wait, he takes the shot, and you're like, oh, that went in. Oh, yeah. Like almost didn't expect that when that ball when he lets that one go.
Well, and especially the keeper was just kind of caught flat-footed. Like in theory, he was close enough. If he had like landed on the ground, arm outstretched, he might have been able to stop that. But he didn't even try. It was just too fast for him to process, I think.
Oh yeah, I think that's and maybe he's being screened a little bit too, with some of the defenders and all that. But yeah, he's just he can't react quickly enough, and he's not going to dive because he's kind of realizes like as soon as he sees it, he goes, nah, this isn't. At that point, keepers, I've heard from keepers, like you just kind of hope that he missed. It really is what it comes down to, and he did not miss.
No, that was another great moment. So we had some this week. We can't forget that. One thing that was funny that I noticed early in this match, and I didn't make a note of it at the time. I can't remember which player it was or the exact circumstances, but there was a ball where it was, if I'm remembering it correctly, there was a ball bounced up off the pitch somewhere between like the 18-yard box and the touchline, and it bounced into a player's hand that was outstretched in a mostly natural position, but it did clearly hit his hand. And I realized that I'd gotten it completely backwards. When we've talked about this, it was probably last year or the year before, but I had thought that in Europe, they distinguish between handball and ball to hand. And when it's ball to hand, they try to determine like intent, like, was he trying to make his body bigger or something, or was it just like an incident, so whoops, it bounced into him, which this clearly was. I don't even remember. It could have been a Bayer Leverkusen player or Arsenal. I don't remember at this point, but no, apparently I had it totally backwards. It's in Europe that they'll call it when it touches your hand, basically no matter what. It's in England where maybe you get away with it if it looks accidental. I don't know.
I mean, yeah, we've seen in several instances the games in the Champions League tend to be called a little more by the book than what we'll see in the Premier League, which certainly has a higher tolerance for physicality, but also also for that sort of that judgment call on the handballs. Whereas in many cases in Europe, you'll see those calls given out kind of as we said, letter of the law. I mean, it bit Manchester City. Same time we were playing, City was playing their second leg against Real Madrid. Went down a man in the first half because basically a red, hit. Who was that? Was it Bernardo Silva? Hit a City player in the arm as he's on the goal line defending his own goal line, and so it was dogso. It was
Oh.
So it was a straight red. So
I saw it because I caught they cut to the end of that match after this one was over in the replay that I was watching, and so I saw they were on a red at that point, but I didn't know the circumstance. So
yeah, it had been in the first half. So they were kind of done at that point. I mean, it's certainly there are a lot of positives to take from the performance overall. Obviously, we played very well. Bayer Leverkusen, again, not the team that went unbeaten in Germany 2 years ago, but still a team with some talent, still a team with some players that can cause some problems. And we beat them pretty handily. And the team that caused us some problems in the first leg, we beat them pretty handily and did so. I don't know that we necessarily hit the heights that we saw maybe in some of the like against Atletico Madrid or Bayern in those games. I don't think we were that good, but we were certainly efficient, effective. Honestly, this might have been as good a game as Victor Gyökeres has played in an Arsenal shirt. I thought he was excellent in this game. And, as a striker, it's a little disappointed, obviously, for him that he doesn't get a goal to go with the performance. But honestly, I thought he was very good. I thought Pierre Hincapié had a really nice game. The defense, to the extent they were tested, Declan Rice was everywhere on the field. Saka was dangerous. There's so, David Raya had to make like one or two saves, but he made them as he does. Really just overall an outstanding performance. And in the broader context of the English experience of the Champions League, I think it stands out a little bit. There's only two English teams remaining in the competition, us and Liverpool advancing. I mean,
right.
Chelsea were dumped out pretty unceremoniously by PSG. City went down hard to Real Madrid. Newcastle got torn apart in the second half by Barcelona, and then also Spurs. Athletic actually put in a pretty good performance in their second leg, and then Athletic kind of finished them off. So, yeah, I mean, it is not easy at this stage of the competition. It's not easy, and so for us to come with a win and a draw, to get into that last eight. I mean, still unbeaten in the Champions League.
Yeah, that's basically. So one other thing, you mentioned all of the team performances in this match. One unfortunate thing that happened is midway through the second half, this was in the 70th minute, Havertz had to come on for Eze, who was moving around with some difficulty after something. I don't know. I didn't exactly see what led to Eze's injury, but it was right before they had a triple sub already planned. So they had to wait for that to finish, and then they were able to finally actually sub him off.
Yeah,
he was out today too, so it clearly must have been bad.
Yeah, I guess at the time, I think the conversation around us was because right. I recall that now he does go down, and I think some of the conversation around us was okay. Let's just hope because I feel like we've seen this a couple times this year where a guy like feels something, especially some of those warm up injuries, and like he's like, I thought I felt something. To which point the management's like, all right, nope, shut it down, get him off. Like because we have the kind of depth that we don't need to we don't need to push guys who maybe aren't 100%. You can be precautionary, and at that point, it's too. It was shortly after we made it 2-0. So at that point, I think the hope was that it was a little more precautionary. Obviously,
right.
with this, and he's out for England in this international break, although I'm not going to complain about that. But it makes sense. He came out with an injury, wasn't even on the bench for the Carabao Cup final, so it would be a bit unusual for him to accept a call up for England at this point. But a little disappointing, especially given how good he had been earlier, in the course of the game.
Yeah. It's actually funny looking at my notes from that section. I totally forgot there was that goal that was called back by VAR too, because I guess again it graced Kai Havertz's hand. The ball did on its way into the goal. So in England, even I think even if that were ball to hand, then
we had one of those. I think last year in a Premier League game. It's the same kind of thing, and that's direct from the laws of the game. A ball cannot go off even accidentally. The ball cannot go off a hand and go into the net directly into the net. It has to have hit something else afterwards. And clearly hits right off his hand and. Of course, you try to celebrate. He tries to celebrate it, but I mean, we know. Come on, we know.
Yeah, but another funny thing, did you see the linesman go tumbling onto the field at one point?
Yeah, I saw that, and my first thought was he must have tripped or something. But he goes for a spill, and so I was like, man, that's a heck of a trip. How fast was he moving? And then they show the replay, and he ran into the subs.
Yeah, he just was looking perpendicular to the direction of travel, and the subs were there warming up, and apparently not looking out for him. And
yeah, it's interesting because we had this conversation in the pub in that moment because in American football, even your off the field position is supposed to be heavily regulated. You're supposed to be within your bench area. But we also know guys are spread all the way out for whatever reason at various points. And of course, the sidelines are packed with people for all kinds of reasons. But, I have seen instances where players are outside of where they're supposed to be, but the referee ends up colliding with them because he's running and following the play. And then the team gets in trouble because you're not where you're supposed to be.
Right.
But it's funny because I don't know necessarily like the point of the subs is that they are out there warming up and stretching, so they should be over there. Right. Now they obviously should be paying more attention, but it was just an interesting kind of contrast to sort of what would or wouldn't happen or how that's supposed to work. I'm also thinking
it really seems like where they need to be only applies to the managers. Like they need to be in the technical area. They can't leave it at least for extended periods.
I was about to say we've seen all the managers, including Arteta, leave and not get penalized for it. That's definitely that's honored in the breach. But
it has to be like I'm thinking of the yellow card that Pep Guardiola received today. I guess that was an excessive celebration yellow card, but he was outside the technical area when it was given.
Yeah, I mean, and every once in a while you'll see those, and a lot of times, you'll see Arteta. And he did it this week. He's done it in the last couple of weeks. Like when they score, he turns around and runs into the bench. And I think that's partly like to keep himself contained. Obviously, because there's players and the coaches there and everybody hugs and all that. But I think I do think that's also a way to sort of keep himself contained so he's not like sprinting down the length of the sidelines. Because there are times he would like to do that.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, that's a good thought. That probably is why he turns around that way. It's at least part of it. Yeah, so overall, a good outing, a good way to begin the week and start building the anticipation of the coming cup final this weekend.
I mean, first, before we talk about the game itself, let's start on something more positive note here right away. This is your first cup final. just what was it? What was it like for you? At least certainly, well, at least let's take us all the way up to like maybe to kick off, or maybe just shortly after kickoff, and just sort of the experience of you as a fan, obviously watching on TV, but just sort of the experience of you as a fan, kind of getting into this moment of a cup final.
Yeah. So first of all, when it first came up a couple of weeks ago, you pointed out, we're going to Wembley. How do you feel? And I didn't really feel much at that point. I didn't know what to expect, what to feel. Like, I didn't know what to make of it. It was totally new, right? I did start noticing over the course of this week, as it got closer and it started, like, the gravity of it started setting in, like, okay, this is an opportunity to win a trophy. This is a big deal. This is an important match. It started sinking in. And basically, once that was the next match coming up, I started really psyching myself up for it. Made plans to do whatever I needed to do to make sure I could watch live. I rarely watch live most of the time. It happens, but I need to make an effort to do it, right? So not only did I make plans for myself to watch live, I made plans to make sure basically my entire family, including my parents, like all watched live together, bridged over a phone call. But, my wife and son on the sofa with me, like all watching together, all there for this moment that I was starting to feel was a big moment, right? Mm-hmm. So then, the match starts to unfold. We have the players walking out. You start seeing the competition inscription on the center of their jerseys. You see Wembley from the outside, and I'm telling my son about, this is neutral territory. This is where cup finals are held in London. The commentators are talking about how in Pep Guardiola's last 10 years with Manchester City, they've been there 24, 26 times. It was in the 20s, mm-hmm. Right? And, that was setting the tone a little bit. I see the crowd divided half and half, like the blue half and the red half, oddly reminiscent of this one type of Fortnite map that my son has me play on, the red versus blue. But it started to get really exciting, and you could tell at the beginning that, everyone was really on edge, playing to win. This was probably the fiercest competition I've seen between Manchester City and Arsenal. And obviously we've seen them a bunch of times over the last few years that I've been watching. And you could tell that this felt different, even compared to some of the contentious matches of last year, with us getting sent off in the first half and, stuff like that. This felt big. You could tell that the players were responding to it as a huge moment,
Yeah, one of the things they always talk about with Wembley is how big it is. As Americans, I think we kind of lose a little of that perspective because Wembley, they said it seats 90,000. It's big. It's a big stadium. Now, the US, we have bigger ones.
I feel like they may have even said 100,000 in attendance or something. Yeah,
maybe. It's definitely up there, but it's not just the stadium and the seats that are big, though that's there, but it's also the field is actually, remember, there's a range of sizes acceptable. Wembley, I think, is the largest pitch in the country.
They did say something about that. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's and the size of the stadium. You can get jaded by these kinds of things, but I think both Welcome to Wrexham does an episode based on this. Ted Lasso has an episode where they play in Wembley, and they just sort of talk about the experience of walking in there, and that's. You're there's something special about being in that place. It means something. And as you point out, because it's used only for these kind of special occasions, it is used for, okay, it's got concerts and other things there. But as far as the football goes, it's there for cup finals, some semifinals. If we beat Southampton in the quarterfinals, the semifinal will be in Wembley as well as the final. And then the England national team plays there. That's their home stadium.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, it is the kind of place that you only go to, especially as a player. You only go there because you're doing something spectacular, right? Because you're in a final or you're playing for England. There's something about being able to step out in the field and being a part of that is just, I guess in some ways there isn't really anything. I'm trying to think of what would be comparable in the American example. At a professional level, it isn't, because so many of the the competitive games, the playoff competition is all at somebody's home field. The closest might be the Super Bowl. But the Super Bowl moves around, and
it moves around, and it's always some team's home stadium, not the team typically that's playing in it, either of them. But yeah, exactly, it is a regular NFL stadium. Yeah,
right.
We don't have an analog to this, I don't think. Yeah,
I don't. No, we don't. We don't have a national stadium. I was thinking even this most recent Super Bowl was in Santa Clara, at the home of the San Francisco 49ers. The Seattle Seahawks, who end up winning the Super Bowl, play there every year because they're in the same division. So like it there really is nothing quite like that. I could almost maybe make an argument for something like the Rose Bowl, but even that is kind of it's one of several opportunities, and it really just isn't anything like it. And it's fun to be able to say you're going. Obviously, you're watching on TV, so in a sense, it looks like every other stadium you're playing in. But there is a sense, as you point out, that and because it's a cup final, that it's a little different. So I do love that moment. Whenever the team, I find this way a lot not a lot, but I found this when like the Giants have made the Super Bowl. There's some moment somewhere in the build up to the game where like you're sitting there, and like one time I could remember it exactly. I was driving home when I was in grad school. I was driving home, and I was stopped at a light, and all of a sudden I was just like, oh my God, the Giants are in the Super Bowl next week. Like, it just kind of dawns on you, like, oh my God. The Carabao Cup final isn't quite that, but it is interesting when you have that moment where it kind of dawns on you that, hey, we're here. This is it. Yeah. This is the game we've wanted.
Yeah. And real-time follow-up, it is 90,000 capacity. I could have sworn that someone said in the broadcast there was 100,000 people there, but yeah, 90,000 capacity on their site.
I mean, it could also be, so this is actually the redone Wembley. So in the early 2000s, they closed the stadium for a few years. They basically rebuilt the entire thing. And so you'll see, like, this one is a new one. The giant arch thing they got going on there, which I don't quite know what the story with that is. But that's that's presumably when in its older incarnation was 100,000 or over 100,000, partly because they didn't have
terraces.
Everyone just got right. They had the terraces and the standing room and all that. So
yeah, but no, it was cool, and you can definitely tell. Like, I'm looking right now at the beginning of the highlights. They show again like the two teams walking out onto the pitch, and you can tell how much more enormous the crowd is just in any place. Like, even compared to the Emirates or some of the other stadiums that are like fairly large capacity by English standards, it dwarfs them definitely.
Yeah, I mean, Emirates is 60,000. It is not a small stadium.
No.
But yeah, obviously it's quite a difference from Mansfield Town a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, yeah. It really matters. You could see from a club like that's perspective, like, just what a big stage it is. Like, should they make it to the Carabao Cup or FA Cup final or semifinal for FA Cup? But yeah, what a shock that has to be, even compared to some of the bigger Premier League ones. Wow.
There are some of those lower tier cups for the from lower tier clubs, if they're in the final, if they end up going to Wembley, like literally a non-trivial percentage of the town will go to fill the seats in their section. Like, you're like, the town is almost abandoned because of how many people are turning up for this game.
Right.
Not the case with Arsenal and City, obviously two giant fan bases, but still.
Yes.
And in Arsenal's case, it's just on the other side of town. Like, it's not really.
Right. But yeah, so one thing that came out, again, the enormity of the situation kind of sinking in. I'm reading about it more. I'm reading headlines more than I typically do. I usually end up reading more about non-Arsenal stuff when it comes across my feed, because it's a way to kind of keep up on what might be going on elsewhere in the league. That's how I found out about these Pedro Neto things we talked about earlier. But I'm like actually reading like, oh, Arteta has made a decision about which keeper he's going to play. And it was leaked. It wasn't like officially. He said, I have made a decision, but did not say who it was going to be. I believe it was official from City as of yesterday that they were going to play their cup keeper in the match. And that basically added extra credence to the reports I was reading that Kepa Arrizabalaga was going to be in goal for us, which, I personally, I respected, going with the keeper that got you there in the first place. Especially we did have him save that penalty early on that, actually made sure we advanced at that point. He made sure we stayed in the competition. That made sense to me. How did you feel about him playing Arrizabalaga?
Yeah, I think that was kind of because I was obviously reading the same reports you were. The sense was, I think around Thursday or Friday, I think the sense was that he was going that Kepa was going to be getting the start. I mean, yeah. I don't want to underrate the guy. I know he's a backup keeper. I know he gets a lot of stick. There was some mention, I think they dropped the most expensive goalkeeper in the war at one point, which, by the way, was Chelsea's money. We paid like $5 million for him. But yeah, I mean, he has been a top level keeper. He was at Chelsea for several years, and is what he is. He's not there's a reason he's the backup, and the reason that there weren't a lot of offers for him to go start for places. But overall, I get it, and especially with both teams rolling out their keepers, especially given you look at the rest of the lineup we had out there. I mean, of course, Timber being out means Ben White starts. We saw Hincapié instead of Calafiori. I guess I kind of wonder if Calafiore's ready for. I think he's played 90 minutes recently, though, in some games. I think, hasn't he?
I don't remember. I feel like he has been subbed in. I don't think he has started. Okay. I can quickly verify, but yeah.
Okay, so maybe
he started against Everton actually, but I don't know. He got subbed on into the second half, so he didn't play 90.
Right. So yeah, I wonder with Calafiori if there's that kind of thing as well. But otherwise, you had Ben White. As out, so you're dropping Havertz back into the midfield, but still Saka, Trossard, Gyökeres. I mean, like, there's talent on the field for us to the point where I don't feel like, and I know when we'll talk about the goals, I know he's going to get a lot of blame, especially for the first one. I don't think Kepa is the reason we lost, and I think it's too simple to talk about it in those terms. So even if you're looking and going back, like, gee, should Arteta have started Raya? I don't know. I don't know that I could say that. If you're committed to the cup keeper like that, and I don't think it was a bad choice. I don't think he's why we lost. But obviously with that goal coming the way it did, kind of opens the question, I think, a little bit more.
Mm-hmm. Well, an interesting way to think about it would be, okay, well, this isn't the only cup competition that we're going deep in this year. We're obviously going to be moving on to the quarterfinal of the FA Cup also. Should we win that? Should we advance past the semis into the final of the FA Cup? What do you think? A, do you think Arteta should play Kepa in goal? And B, do you think Arteta will play Kepa in goal under that circumstance?
I do think this is going to be context dependent. Like, I think it's going to be a lot based on where we are in terms of
in the league
and the Champions League, because especially the final of the FA Cup is the week before the end of the Premier League season, which is the week before a prospective Champions League final. Mm-hmm. Excuse me. If those games are lined up, I don't know. By the time we walk into the FA Cup final, we're probably only have one game remaining on the schedule. At that point, is the title still an open question? If we've wrapped up the league by that point, then I think that changes the calculus considerably.
Right.
I think alternately, if we haven't, if we're suddenly in a real dogfight for it, and then it becomes a real question. You sort of pick which one you want, the league or the FA Cup. I think that changes the calculus as well. What happened in the Champions League also, I think, is a question. I think there's too much for me to say for sure. And all of that, by the way, we should caveat with, as a keepers are not the same as the other outfield players, right? Like it's not as if like is David Raya going to be winded from playing 2 games every single game from now until the end of the season.
Right.
That's not really how being keeper works. But I in terms of his mental sharpness and all that, we don't know the nature of the conversations with Kepa. We don't necessarily know what he was told. There's obviously rumors and suggestions, but there's no evidence for this. But rumors and suggestions that he was guaranteed the cup games, and Arteta denies that because he says I wouldn't do that, which is fair, probably would. Mm-hmm. But it's kind of interesting to think about. I think though. The short answer is it depends. We still would have that game. A prospective final for the FA Cup is still potentially 2 months away. And based on what we're looking at for the last 2 months of the season, there's a lot that's going to go into that decision that we just aren't going to see yet. So
let's maybe look at it from a different lens. Let's look at it from the opposite direction. Do you think that he would avoid putting Kepa in? Like, if assuming that it's a result that we care about still, right? That we want to win, does he hesitate seeing the performance here in the most pressure he's been under with Arsenal so far?
No, I don't think so. I think he's
okay.
I think if he starts Raya, if he starts Kepa, it's because he feels we can win with Kepa. Which we've won the bunch with him this season, obviously. Right. But I don't think it's a case of I have to win this game, therefore I must start David Raya. I don't know that it's quite looked at it that way. I think he may look at himself at this point and say, okay, especially if we're in trouble in one of the competitions or get knocked out, or all of a sudden maybe we're on the verge of not winning something. Maybe there is a hint of desperation. Say, okay, we're definitely going to start Raya this time. But I don't know. I suspect that again, I think there's too many variables to that decision. But I think if he's in a position where Kepa has to start, I don't think he'll hesitate on that. I think he feels, mostly because Arteta doesn't hesitate about anything except subs. But I think he's decisive enough that he says, if I have to play Raya or I have to play Kepa, I play Kepa, and I don't think he feels like that's an unwinnable proposition. And again, I'll state it. Kepa's not why we lost today.
Right. Also, let's get into the nuts and bolts of this match. So, to me, there were kind of 3 phases of this. We had the first quarter or so. You had the second half of the first half, so the second quarter, right? And then you had the whole second half. So talking about that first quarter, I think that was clearly the brightest spot for Arsenal all day today, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, we came out firing. We looked strong. We looked aggressive. We were determined. In some ways, it was a little bit like the Bayer Leverkusen game. I'll be honest. Going in, I was very confident. I do think at our best, we're better than City. But I think this first 15, 20 minutes, I think you saw a little bit of that we came out. And look, City have been struggling. They took the 2 losses to Real Madrid. They drew their last 2 Premier League games against West Ham and Forest, like two teams in a relegation fight. Like, this is a City team that in some ways looked a little bit like it was reeling in some ways. And Arsenal's not your get-right game necessarily. We're too good for that. But, and I think those first 10 to 15 minutes, and then, of course, really the key sequence, of course, is that triple save, Havertz, Saka twice on the rebounds.
Yeah. Ooh.
Honestly, I think if we bury one of those, I think this is obvious. It's a truism. Obviously, it's a completely different game, but I think that completely changes the tenor of the entire match.
Well, and especially that was so early. That was in the 7th minute. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think we would have. I'm not going to say we definitely would have won at that point, but I think it changes the entire tenor of the game. I think it opens up a lot of other things for us going forward.
I wonder, had we scored then, that's around when we scored against Brighton recently, do you think we would do the same thing? Just kind of bunker and protect it?
I don't know that we would necessarily. It's too early to do that, especially in a game of this magnitude.
Right.
I think obviously the nature of the opposition and the nature of the what's the word I'm looking for? The circumstances or the stakes. That was it. The stakes. I mean, with Brighton was very much a look, just like let's get out of here. And I think with in a cup final, there's a little more of an impetus to be a little more positive, a little more forward. But and City was scrambling a little bit. We were finding opportunities. We were developing chances. We were pushing. We were searching a little bit like Bayer, in that we were kind of starting to probe a little bit. And if it goes a little too much longer, we start to find that range or find that opportunity. And then, to be fair, at that point, City started to grow into the game.
Yeah, I mean, so so yeah, it was the second half of the first half, the second quarter, where they started chaining together some serious possession. They started making overtures, no direct shots on goal, I don't think, at least that I recall, but started knocking on the door a little bit. But we were still up to the task at that point, right? Like we were still rebuffing them, holding them at bay. And we kept the first half scoreless. And I definitely felt coming out of the locker room that we were going to come out swinging again and, reassert ourselves, get on the scoreboard, and that would be it. But
I mean, they definitely were they were definitely more confident. City was, they were definitely more forward, we're generating possession opportunities. I do feel a little bit, there's an argument to be made. I think our defense on some level played pretty well today, at least in terms of limiting their shot opportunities. They didn't actually have that many opportunities, or they didn't have many opportunities that we didn't block off. And I thought the center backs in particular, obviously a key part of their game was dealing with Erling Haaland, which I thought they did very well overall. I mean, sure, he's going to get himself into position a couple times a game, but that's just kind of something you live with as long as you limit those opportunities and he doesn't convert them. We were having a little bit more trouble out in the wings, though. You could see they were getting a lot there. Doku and obviously McGee did a lot. It's frustrating because I think we did a good job overall in the defensive side of the defensive game. We did not do a very good job. You could see it in the first half, and then in the second half, we just kind of fell apart on us. Was those transitions? We were entirely unable to maintain possession, and it is kind of how it goes. Is you think about a number of opportunities, good opportunities, dangerous opportunities they created, but there's Calafiori sliding in with a block. There's Saliba muscling Haaland off the ball and not letting a shot attempt go off. Doing the kinds of things that you needed to do. Wasn't Calafiori, obviously, because he wasn't on the field, but players jumping in and doing those kind of desperate defending things. It felt. The problem was we'd get the ball and then essentially hoof it upfield, and there was nobody.
Right, or carelessly give it away. There was a few loose passes sprinkled throughout that started to become a problem. But yeah, exactly. Like that bothered me a couple times where we were just clearing the ball, which, as I've been reading about in the soccer skills book I'm reading with my son, like, when you're a maintain possession style club, it's easy to make the demand of yourself that every single ball needs to go to a player on your team. And that's a destructive mindset too. There are times where you really do just need to clear it, but you still don't like to see it, and you want to hopefully find other ways. A lot of time they were doing that more and more.
Yeah, they were. Sometimes, you got to hoof the ball away, but they just weren't able to maintain possession. I think this is really where the lack of midfield depth today was really telling. I mean, you think about with Eze out, but also Odegaard's gone, Marino's gone. I mean,
right.
Rice and Zubimendi are both definitely more comfortable, especially Rice being more deep lying and pushing the ball forward. City did a good job in the first half. I really thought we could get them with it. They played a very high defensive line. You saw their center backs and their fullbacks were almost to the halfway line. But I thought we were able to find some space there. But in the second half, it became a little bit suffocating. That anytime we started to have any momentum and chance to move the ball forward, they were there. And it's frustrating because we limited so many of those good opportunities, and then it was basically they get their goal off of what it was just a stupid one. It was one that I wasn't worried about at all until it was too late.
Yeah, so let's move into the second half now, where everything took a really unexpected and calamitous turn. So before that fateful block attempt on Kepa's part, we had him being caught out. I think was it against Doku? I think where he was way off his line. Doku's rushing back, and the ball bounces higher or it bounces differently than Kepa expected, and he ends up in a race with Doku to get back and muscles him out of the way, giving up a really, really dangerous free kick with a yellow card, by the way, but a really dangerous free kick right next to the 18-yard box, which he totally botched the delivery and just sent it clear to no one over the byline harmlessly. So crisis averted there, but
I wasn't quite sure of the. I guess I shouldn't say sure of the yellow. I mean, he kind of grabs the shirt and does all that, so I can't be too mad about it. Yeah, that was one. He kind of misjudged where the ball was.
You could make a case for dogs, though. I think the only thing preventing that was White and Saliba had tracked back, so it wasn't a totally open net. But I mean, it's hard finding fault with the yellow on that one.
I remember a bizarre incident late in the FA Cup final against Hull City when we broke that drought. That was 2014, I think. The keeper, it's a bonkers play in extra time where our keeper ran all the way out to the sideline with tried to make a tackle. It was a complete mess. I don't know how we didn't give up a goal there. It was it wasn't that, but it was definitely a real questionable decision all around. But really, again, the goal came off of a stupid mistake. I thought we were generally containing, I think it was Doku had it. I thought we were generally containing Mo, forcing him into a bad opportunity. I mean, how many times have we seen those balls chipped across the box and then David Raya just plucks it out of the air and that's the end of it? And
Which is what Kepa tried to do.
And he just missed. I mean, there's no other way to say it. And there's McGee. And O'Reilly. Sorry.
Yeah, O'Reilly. Yeah,
Irish name. There's O'Reilly.
Yeah. So I think for me, it's more frustrating that Kepa makes contact, that he does get both hands on the ball and then drops it. If it was so high that he couldn't reach it, right? It bothers you less. But the fact that he got his hands there and just wasn't strong enough with him, it just blew through it. That's where you really wish he had done better,
Yeah,
that was credit to O'Reilly for being there and being ready. It was just unfortunate that those two things happened at the same time. I don't know who was marking O'Reilly. I'm trying to look at the replay now, but it was Zubamendi. He also kind of threw Zubamendi around, actually. Looking back.
But I don't think Zubamendi's marking him so much as O'Reilly's making the run and Zubamendi's kind of in the area. You could be critical of Zubamendi. I think that's a little unfair. I think he does a decent job with a tough opportunity.
I wasn't trying to throw him under the bus. If anything, I was noticing watching the replay over and over again just now that O'Reilly is actually kind of throwing Zubamendi to the ground, has a firm grasp on his arm and just kind of tosses him a little bit, which didn't cause anything under scrutiny, but that was kind of the beginning of the end at that point. Now, do you think that it needed to get to this point? I mean, this goal was in the 60th minute, so 15 minutes into the second half. Do you think that it was reasonable to start with the lineup that we had in the first half and hold on to it that long?
I don't think it was I guess I would have been surprised because that's not very Arteta-like to come with the subs. Because you always have to think, especially in a stage like this, the psychological aspect of substitutions. Like a halftime sub is unusual, especially in a game of this magnitude. Like, what does it say about your decision making in terms of who's playing, right? And I think there's a little bit, as we said, they're trying to get to the half. So let's get to the half, let's get to the locker room, regroup, and then we come back out and try to reestablish ourselves from there. But man, they had nothing going on for those first 15 minutes, and I just feel like he had to be a little. I guess. So here's where I'm torn on it. On the one hand, I feel like they had to be a little more aggressive in terms of making some changes. On the other hand, as we kind of mentioned, the guys you would want to be able to put on at that instant were either on the field or worse, like an Eze was just unavailable. And so it just we kind of got caught out tactically. And you'll say it too. I thought we had a ton of problem on the left side. Trossard was very lively early on, but he kind of faded as the game went on. Hincapié was having some problems. Now, he also picked up a yellow, which I think the yellow was the right call, although, I'll keep my conversations about City and the referees brief. I have some issues with it, but yeah, you can see Hincapié is he has to play on the yellow, and that's a difficult position to be in. But I didn't think he didn't have a particularly good game. Saka was struggling in the second half. You needed somebody. Havertz. I just don't know. Havertz is the guy who can take the ball and go on a run from within your own zone, which is really kind of what we needed at certain points. I feel like Eze would have been better at that point.
Or Martinelli.
Yeah, and that's true. Martinelli was a guy I think I was hoping to see earlier than we eventually got on. But yeah, it just... Yeah, I guess you'd like to see... Honestly, I did think of it, which is interesting, because I didn't think he played very well when he came on. I wonder almost if Madueke would have been an interesting choice a little earlier, at least before they had scored, or at least after the first goal, just because he's a guy who's going to put his head down and dribble, and maybe not necessarily to go anywhere in particular. But I wonder if it would have been just a little something to just take a little pressure off of us.
Right.
Defensively.
By the time we brought him on, it was an emergency, and who knows where their heads were at that point, because then you're down 2-0 midway through the second half. I'm sure they got in their heads a lot, yeah.
And City, too, I don't want to say they backed off, because I don't think that's accurate, but City was definitely, they were willing to sit back a little bit, play a little more patient possession, sort of a more classic Guardiola City, where they weren't trying to carve, to move quickly in transition, put pressure on us, carve us open in the same way. And yeah, that's it's kind of a frustrating. At that point, it's frustrating. I thought especially we were way too slow with the last subs, Martinelli and Jesus coming on. I think we had to be more aggressive with those early on. I like to wait all the way to the 82nd minute. It's 2-0, man. You can't go an extra 20 minutes of getting our butts kicked. You got to.
No.
Man, I understand wanting to let the new guys settle in a little bit, but man, I feel like it was all just a little too. It was too little, too late in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I mean, Jesus toward the end of regular time did have that header that clanged off the crossbar. I mean, more minutes on the pitch, who knows what he would have been able to come up with in that same vein,
Yeah, maybe. I feel like, and I've been a big Jesus booster for a while, but it feels like the more we see him, the more I wonder that we're not quite. He isn't Jesus. I don't want to say anymore, like he's dead or something. But he's that guy. Maybe just because of the injuries, I don't know what, but that guy is not who we have anymore.
Yeah, well, so we lost the cup. This was the first of 4 trophies that we were hoping to potentially earn this season. Where does that leave us? Where do we go from here?
The conversation around the Carabao Cup is always very fascinating, because the Carabao Cup is only a big trophy if you win it. If you don't win it, it's like it's just the League Cup. But I mean, we were all in a pretty foul mood, obviously, when the game ended. But some of the post game commentary about how important this game was, especially for City, was laid on a little thick. It's not good. I mean, in a sense, the best case scenario is we watch this. And, they said we turned it off afterwards, but so I was told this is what happened. The Arsenal players stayed on the field, and that's common. They stay on the field while the trophy's given out. And so, of course, they're sort of watching it and taking it in. And a lot of guys in a lot of sports talk about that. Like, watching the other team receive the trophy, like, is just that little extra motivator going forward. I mean, let's be honest, this was just a bad day. I don't know how much of this was Arteta overthinking the tactical matchup with City. I think a lot of ways, in spite of the bright start, I hate to say we got a lot of things wrong, but it felt like it didn't quite work the way it was supposed to, or they made an adjustment and we didn't adjust quickly enough to it. But I mean, we're still in the quarterfinals of the FA Cup. We're still in the quarterfinals of the Champions League. We're still 9 points clear of City. Yes, right. We have to go up there. Again, this is a City team that was winless in their last 4 in all competitions, that had just been knocked out of the Champions League, had just been, had just gotten 2 backbreaking draws in the league play. I think they did win a game somewhere in there too before that. But the point is, we keep talking about them like they're this unstoppable juggernaut, and it's frustrating the way it all played out. Like, you could imagine a very tightly played game. Imagine a back and forth game, both teams or a tight, cagey, not a lot of chances kind of defensive game. And then you have the Kepa mistake where he lets it go through his hands and they score the goal. And on the one hand, it sucks and you're mad and it's terrible. On the other hand, you could be like, well, they got lucky. They did not get lucky today. They beat us.
Well, we didn't even end up talking about the second goal.
I have nothing to say about the second goal. Right. I'll just leave it at that. I mean, they beat us, and I think we have to kind of wear that. You have to wear that for a little bit. Obviously, it's 2 weeks until our next game, which is a little annoying, but it's a frustrating way to go into the international break, is off the back of a loss. But recall, the last time that happened was the Liverpool game beginning of the season, and then we didn't lose again for 2 months. Right. Which I could go for not losing again in 2 months. I'll just say that.
Really, that carries us through the end of the season at this point.
Right. So I think as long as, hopefully we can get Eze and Timber back, Odegaard back, once we, over the break, get the rest, get them back in. I still think we have a fairly, I don't say comfortable, a favorable run-in. Yes, we have to go up there, but recall, City needs to win their game in hand, which still isn't scheduled, by the way, because Crystal Palace advanced in the Conference League, so they don't have a midweek. They can't play that game because Palace has European commitments and City doesn't.
Right.
Yeah, there's a good chance for both of us, I think, that another one of our league games gets rescheduled because of potentially an FA Cup semifinal as well. I don't look at this City team and say they're going to walk to win their final 8 games. And even if they did that, they would still require us to lose
2 plus goal difference.
Yeah, to lose 2 of those games, obviously one of them being to them. But we'd have to lose another one as well. And that assumes they win all 8, which I just don't see them do. I still think we're in a pretty good position overall. As long as there were points in the second half where the first time this season I felt like, I think the pressure is getting to us a little bit. Like, we're talking about all the pressure being built up around the quad and to win the league and to do all these great things. I think today in the second half was the first time I felt like, they're really feeling it a little bit. But every time Arsenal has kind of dropped this season, they've always bounced back.
Yeah.
And so I think as long as they contain that, at the end of the day, if there are a lot of ways this season ends where we look back on this one and go, it's just the Carabao Cup.
Right. Yeah, no, hopefully we'll be laughing about this in a couple months. This week, with a return leg against Bayer Leverkusen and then the Carabao Cup final against Manchester City, who was your player of the week?
So for me, it was a tough one because the games were so different in a lot of ways. But the player I really want to shout out on this one is William Saliba. I think everybody was pretty much good against Bayer Leverkusen. So obviously, shout out to the defense for yet another clean sheet. I think Saliba gets a lot of credit as well. One player who really didn't bother us a lot in this game, or at least certainly didn't make his mark in any notable way, was Erling Haaland. And Saliba was a big part of that. He and Gabriel love. He and Gabriel love going head to head with Haaland. There was one instance where it looked for a moment like Haaland may have had a step on the defense, and we've seen him beat Gabriel in a foot race. Saliba ran him down and had a couple times where he battles with him physically. We've talked about Saliba the last couple of weeks has been for some of his foibles, right? Some of the plays that don't go particularly well. But here I think it's worth remembering like how good he really can be. And I thought today he was very good overall, even in the midst of a kind of a largely more indifferent performance from the club as a whole.
Right.
How about on your end?
Yeah, for me, it's really tricky, and I struggle with this a lot of weeks. Like you said, the matches are very different. The lineup and the way they performed was also kind of different in ways that mattered. So on the one hand, if this were a one-match week, it were just Bayer Leverkusen, easy decision, Piero Hincapié as my player of the week. He was really good against them. I noticed a bunch of really good defensive plays that he made that impressed the heck out of me. But like you said in the cup final, he got a yellow in the 16th minute. Maybe that was a lot of why, but didn't really do much for me in this match. And he ended up getting subbed off for Calafiori toward the end. So ultimately, I can't go with him as much as I would like to based on his performance in the first match of the week. Eze and Rice scored the goals. Rice had his moments in the cup final, but nothing really outstanding for him, and Eze didn't even play. But I find myself gravitating toward Eze because you have to wonder, were he able to play? Could things have been different? It's a possibility, not a certainty by any stretch, but overall, I feel like he broke the dam with Bayer. I go to say Bayern, but anyway, Bayer Leverkusen. He broke the dam open, paved the way for that second goal to assure the victory. And, overall, he's been in good form. Like he's really doing well. And it's a shame that he wasn't able to participate in this match. And I think his absence loomed large over this cup final today in a way that, you have to wonder what might have been different.
Yeah, he's a guy. I think we talked about the options off the bench. He's a guy. I think if we roll out with the starting lineup, but he's available, I do think perhaps he would have been an option maybe to settle things down. I don't know. It's possible. I'm not going to go so far as to say like obviously he's the difference in this regard, but you could argue he was conspicuous by his absence today.
Right. The camera loved lingering on him and Timber sitting side by side out of the bench.
Yeah.
So, clearly somebody at CBS Sports was thinking the same thing. We're still top of the table in the Premier League, at least.
Yeah, I mean, as we said, like it's again frustrating, but also there's still a lot of this doesn't ruin the season, right? This doesn't knock us out of anything else except this one competition, which again, I would rather win it than not. But we're still 9 points clear of City in the league. even though they have a game in hand, but still they got to reschedule that at some point. Like it's not just as easy just assume they're going to pick up 3 points on that one as well. And we are, by the way, again, reminder, into the quarterfinals of the FA Cup and into the quarterfinals of the Champions League, where we're set to play Sporting Club Portugal, our old friends from Lisbon.
We've seen them a few times the last several years across the Europa League and the Champions League, I think. Or it was Porto that we played in the Europa League, I think.
It was Porto. We did beat Sporting. We beat them last year in Champions League, and I feel like we also beat them. Did we beat them in the Europa League?
No, I think they eliminated us. I think they eliminated us our first time back in the Champions League, I think.
Yeah. We know. Well, no, they did. No, it was Bayern who beat us, knocked us out of the Champions League. I'm pretty sure. But anyway, yeah. Anyway, the point is, it's a team we've seen before. It's a big moment for Victor Gyökeres. Of course, Sporting was where he was before we signed him over the summer. But yeah, and frankly, of all the quarter potential, I mean, obviously this was part of the draw, so we knew that coming in the bracket. But certainly the weakest remaining team, I think, in terms of their overall quality. Still very dangerous, but I think we of all the other sides, I think we're the ones looking at our matchup and feeling probably the best about our opposition and our capabilities.
So I looked up the history to correct myself on this one. So in 2018 to 2019, they were in our group. We beat them 1-0 and then drew at home, apparently, against them. But then we played them in the round of 16 in the 22-23 season. So I think that would have been
that was your first.
That was Europa League. Yeah, exactly. So and so the first leg we drew 2-2 away in Lisbon, and then at home we drew 1-1, and we I think they eliminated us on penalties is what it was.
Yes. I feel like was that the one where like they hit the goal from midfield, I think?
That I don't remember. But and I'm confirming 3-5 on penalties. So they knocked us out of the Europa League is what I was thinking of, not the Champions League.
Yeah. Anyway, a team we've seen before, and a team we've seen before, and a team that has given us problems because they're tough. They're not. This is not an easy draw, but you're in the quarterfinals of the Champions League. There are still major trophies on the table to play for. So despair not, Arsenal fans. Let's sprint it. Let's run through the finish line.
So what's coming up for the next 2 weeks, given that we won't be recording next week?
So next week, obviously, we won't be recording, and Arsenal won't be playing. It's the international break, the final international break of the club season. Also, the final international window before the summer and the World Cup.
Right.
The last, the remaining spots in the World Cup will be decided. The intercontinental playoffs are going to be over the weekend. I believe it's Thursday and then Tuesday are going to be the games, and that's for the intercontinental playoffs. And also, UEFA has their final playoffs for the final spots in the World Cup. There are 2 intercontinental spots remaining and 4 European spots remaining. Or if you're, like us here in the States, the U.S. has 2 friendlies in Atlanta against Belgium and Portugal. So, -1 Cristiano Ronaldo. He was not called up by Portugal this window, or I get the impression he refused to call up. But so other than that, though, 2 interesting opponents. The kits officially dropped. We talked about them a few weeks ago. The Stars and Stripes motifs. So I imagine both of them will get their debut in this window.
Right. Nice.
And then, and then we should say, as for Arsenal perspective, because that's really why I'm here for the show, we are back in action in just under 2 weeks from today, Saturday, April 4th. We are lined up to play Southampton, away to Southampton in the St. Mary's Stadium in the quarterfinals of the FA Cup.
Okay. How is Southampton doing in the championship this season?
Southampton currently sits 6th in the championship, so they're currently in a playoff spot. In terms of the promotion playoffs, they are level on points, but ahead on goal difference with the 7th place team. the plucky little underdog story of Wrexham. So they're right in the mix. Southampton. It is not out of the question that we be playing them next season. In twice in the league, but so let's send a message to them about how difficult that would be. I guess. I'm just kidding. We know Southampton. Obviously, they've been in the league in recent years, so that's not a club we are unfamiliar with. Nothing right. Easy about it. Looking actually, wow, they haven't dropped a league game since mid-January. They were on quite a run. Of course, unbeaten in the. And of course, it includes a couple, 2 FA Cup wins in that stretch as well. They last lost on January 17th. So,
boy,
they're feeling their oats a little bit. Good for them. But they actually interesting. They've got us in the cup on the 4th on the Saturday, and then midweek they're away to Wrexham, a huge game for them in the championship. So, and then they get Derby right after that, who's another club that's right around the mix for a playoff spot. So a lot of. It's a big part of the season for Southampton coming up.
Interesting. Hopefully we can give them some bad news. Well, thanks for joining us at Gooner U. If you're watching us on YouTube, you can also listen to the podcast version of our show on Apple, Spotify, and some other places. If you're only listening, try watching us on YouTube with the link in the show notes. Your homework for today is to hit the like button on one or more of our videos. Help feed the algorithm in our favor. We record the show using Zencastr. If you'd like to try it out, you can support Gooner U by signing up using the link in the description, which also has links to everything we talked about and our socials. Again, my name is Dove, and you can find me on Twitter at Dove Frankel. With me, as always, is Keith, and you can find him in a pub watching Arsenal matches.
Keep the faith, Gooners.